Hey folks, welcome back. I got the electric golf cart out here tonight. Gonna cruise around in stealth. If I can keep my voice down, there's all kinds of critters out here at dusk. And usually if I'm quiet, I end up running into some of them. Saw a fox the other day and had a red squirrel in its mouth. I don't think it was the red squirrel from my sawmill though. But kind of neat to see nonetheless. We do have two resident white-tailed deer that tend to hang out, and I usually see them at dusk. Every once in a while I look off the trail left and right and there's something interesting standing there. Sometimes it's a raven, sometimes it's a fox, sometimes it's a fisher. That was an interesting one. Haven't seen a black bear in a really long time though. Moose, every once in a while, saw those recently. Anyways, we're gonna make our way out here. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some equipment that I've got. Some of you probably have seen it on the channel before, some of you maybe not. Anyways, here we are. Just a short ride out. As you can see, we're out here at the cabin. If you want to see that cabin built, I probably built that about 3 years ago or so. I don't remember quite how long it took me. I think it was about an 8-month build, but I built that with wood completely from the property here, from the ground up. That building there, completely insulated, top, bottom, sides. Got a wood stove in there, a loft. We got a couch in there, a porch around the back, as well as a little walkway on the side. We even have a little coffee table, a spot to put your feet up. Certainly a beautiful thing. Anyways, let's talk about what we're here for today. And that's these two things right here. So this right here is brand new to me. I've been using it for not all that long. This I looked at for such a long time until I decided to buy one. That's a Forestry Grapple. Now up until I got this one by the way is from Woody Equipment out of Quebec, Canada. Before I got this one, I was using my Forestry Winch, and I used this thing for quite some time, a number of years. You might have seen this on previous videos. This right here is the FX85 by Wallenstein. This has turned out to be a great addition. However, today I'm going to tell you why I ended up getting that, and why you might choose one or the other, or both in my case, and how you might use it on a property like I've got, which is essentially a forested property where you're out harvesting trees all the time. Anyways, here we go. Welcome back. Just in case you're not familiar, I called this a forestry winch a minute ago. Sometimes it's referred to as a skidding winch or a logging winch. This hooks up to the 3-point hitch on the back of a tractor in these 3 locations. And then the PTO on the tractor will spin a drum, which if we have a look up top here, you might be able to see there's some cable spooled around that drum. And that drum obviously is what's going to pull that cable in. And this right here has 100 and I think 50 feet of cable. And it's got a 8,500 pound pull. Now on the end of it, these are what it comes with. So we have various spots where we can hook up choker chains, and we've got the choker chains over here. Now we also have a top pull, or we can run that cable down through the bottom where we can pull at a lower place here. Now all along here we have spots where the choker chains can actually go in. So once you pull the logs up to the back here, you can run those choker chains in these locations, and then when you lift with the 3-point hitch, it'll pull and lift the front of the log up off the ground so you're not dragging it in the dirt. Now down here we've got a hitch built in, and I use that to pull around various things, trailers and that sort of thing, when I'm not pulling around logs. So that for the most part is the winch, and how we engage that pull is with this. So that's spring loaded, and so we can pull from either side. This rope here, this white one, you would end up standing probably in this location, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 feet away. Pull that and the cable will come in. Now the green rope is like a brake. So more or less, if you want that cable to hold tension, you would pull the white line for the cable to go in, and if you want it to remain tensioned, you'd pull the green line, and that makes it so that the cable doesn't go slack when you let go of that white line. Something people might not know, with these winches here, at least this model I've got, and I think most winches, when you let go of this and it springs back, there's no tension anymore on the cable. And that's probably for safety reasons. It's very handy that way. You don't want to maintain a whole bunch of tension on your cable. You just want to pull it, And when you let go of that white rope, you want that tension to drop. That just keeps everything safe. As you could tell a minute ago, there's no tension that's maintained on the cable unless you're, of course, pulling this, or, as I said, you've got things locked. So that's the forestry winch. Now over here, we've got the Forestry Grapple. Now this thing has a hydraulically controlled 360-degree rotation and hydraulically controlled grapple on it. Now the opening here, 56 inches, and likewise with the winch over there, this hooks up to the 3-point hitch on the tractor. So you've got the top link here, and then you've got the lower links down here. Now these legs here, they're simply there to hold it up off the ground while you hook your tractor to it. These are not in place while you're actually operating it. So how this works more or less, and you can check out the videos I've got of this, you back up to some logs, depending on which position the logs are, whether they're this way or this way, you can rotate that grapple with controls inside the tractor and grab a hold of those logs. And then you use the 3-point hitch lift control, and you can lift up whatever you've got a hold of. Now this, as it stands, requires you to have 4 connection points, and you can see those there. So essentially 2 will be for the clamping, and the other 2, which you can see have tape on them, that's just so I know these 2 go together and the other ones go together. These 2 will do the rotation. So that's how this thing works. Back to the skidding winch. Several years ago, when I was looking for some implement for my tractor to help me get logs out of the bush, this turned out to be the ticket, a skidding winch or a forestry winch. The reason being is I can't typically drive up to a lot of trees that I need to access, and so this can reach out there and pull them back to me. That was the reason I decided to drop the coin and buy this unit. Now, if you bought implements for a tractor before, you know they're not cheap. This was not cheap, but I'm happy to say it's worked very, very well. Knock on wood, no breakdowns, none of that type of thing for several years. So hopefully that continues right along. Once I decided I needed something to pull stuff out of the woods, I went ahead and bought this, and I've used it and used it and used it. But I've also used it for pulling out vehicles. In the wintertime around here, I got to tell you, sometimes vehicles go off the trails, off my laneway, they go into the ditch. This thing's pulled out more than its fair share of vehicles. Heavy equipment as well. My mini excavator broke down a hill one time. I used this to pull it up it. I'll put the link in this video at the end if you want to see that. This thing's turned out to be very versatile that way. Now it's also nice because it's got that hitch on there. And so even when I've got this on the back of the tractor, I can use it to tow around my trailers quite easily. So very nice that way. Now, what was the reason I ultimately decided on a forestry grapple? Why didn't I just continue hauling around logs with this thing? Well, the truth is, when you're hauling as many logs around as I am, keep in mind I've got the red pine forest where I'm constantly thinning, what I find gets old is choking logs. In order to choke a log, you take a choker chain like this, or if you had cables, choker cables, you can do the same. And basically you have to get out of the tractor after you've backed up to it, or after you've backed wherever you're going to back to. You have to take this and you have to run it under the log. And then once you run it under the log, you essentially put it through the hook. And then this, the opposite end, goes through one of these. And then you can tighten up the cable by pulling on this with the PTO engaged. And then you've got 1 log or maybe 2 logs pulled up tight. You can drive away with it. Now that's fine and dandy. However, if you're doing that day in and day out, which I am, that gets a bit onerous. Getting in the tractor, turning it on, turning on the PTO, pulling the logs up, getting out, choking the logs, pulling them tight with the cable, lifting the 3-point hitch, driving away. Doing that over and over again, and then repeating when you want to drop the logs off. Because once you've got the logs where they're going, you got to turn the PTO on, get out of the tractor, pull this so that the cable goes slack, assuming you had the choker attached to the cable. And then you have to unhook the chain from the log and then put the chain back here. Get back in the tractor, turn the PTO off, and drive back to wherever the logs were and repeat the process. That gets really old really quick if you do it a lot. As I said, I do it a lot, so that's why I find something like this is just a little bit easier for me. And I know what you're thinking. Why on earth, Sandy, would you spend the money on a Forestry Grapple when you already own a skidding winch? You already know it works well. You own it. You paid for it. Why would you spend more money on something that does the same job? Well, I scratched my head and I thought about that exact same scenario situation for a long time. My wallet kept screaming no. My brain eventually screamed yes. My brain won out. I thought about the speed. I thought about the effort savings, and it was worth it in the end. That skidding winch has its application. When I'm in a bush like this, where it's a mixed wood bush, and I can't back up to every tree, that skidding winch is coming out. It's going to shine. However, when I'm in the red pine plantation and I can back up to every tree, this Forestry Grapple is light years faster, and I don't even have to get out of the tractor at all. I'm going to be sitting inside the cab, air conditioning going in the summer, heat going in the winter, no bugs, and I'll be sipping on sludge and listening to the radio, moving around logs at a rapid pace. If I was using the skidding winch, I'd be out there with all the elements trying to fish chains and cables around logs. If there's snow, the logs freeze to the ground. If there's mud, I'm digging through it. And all those thoughts drew me towards a Forestry Grapple. Now, this Forestry Grapple allowed me to do a few things a skidding winch couldn't, and it included lifting a log completely off the ground. If you grab a hold of a log with the grapple, and then you tuck the end of the log right underneath that serrated edge, the log will actually lift completely off the ground. If you need to bucket to length for firewood, or maybe you need to back the log up, with the skidding winch, once it's hooked, you're not backing up with it because you'll just drive it further into the dirt. But with the Forestry Grapple, assuming it's under that front edge, it can lift right up, and you could back up with it a little bit if you needed to. Or if you wanted just to keep it out of the dirt, that is one of the options, and one reason I really like that grapple there. Now, while I'm here talking about the Forestry Grapple, I'll talk a little bit about the 360-degree rotation. Now, there are other manufacturers who make these Forestry Grapples that don't have the 360-degree option. What they have is essentially a self-centering spring. And I thought about that for a long time, and ultimately I decided I want that ability to choose which direction the grapple is going to open and close. And that's why I went with a hydraulic control. Now, with that spring assist on some of the other brands that I've seen, what happens is the grapple generally stays either in this position or in this position, and it has to be locked into one of those two positions with a pin. Now, the spring will allow that grapple, when it grabs onto something and wants to rotate, it'll allow that grapple to spring back to the position you had it set in. Now, that sounds great. However, the scenario that I thought about, which made me go with that hydraulic control for 360, is if I'm backing down a trail and a log is across the trail and I have the grapple set in the opposite direction, I don't want to have to get out of the tractor, pull the pin, rotate the grapple, put it back in just to pick up that one log, because the next log further down might be in the exact opposite direction. I don't want to get in and out of the cab. That's the whole reason I'm going with a Forestry Grapple. And so I decided I wanted that control. But what it does cause is you to need another set of hydraulic controls on your tractor. So as I said, you need two sets of rear remotes if you're going to run a grapple setup like this. You need one set for the open and close on the grapple and one set for the rotation. Now, my tractor from the factory only has one rear remote, and so I had to get creative. What I did was I took long hoses, I hooked it to the connections on my loader, which are connected to my third function kit, and I ran those to the back of the tractor right beside my factory rear remotes. So now it looks like I have two sets, but in actuality I just have one from the factory, with the other set being controlled by my third function. The third function has two buttons on my loader joystick, so that makes things very easy. Now, one thing I'm going to mention, I talked about the 360-degree control. I also talked about some brands which have a spring, which brings the grapple back to the position you have it set at. There are manufacturers out there as well where the grapple essentially is on a bit of a chain, so it can rotate and sway as you move your machine. And I looked at those and they look like they do work, but I thought for my application, I wanted that complete control that comes with the hydraulic 360 degrees. So the question comes up, which out of these two should you buy if you're in the market for them? Well, the truth is it really depends on the size of your operation, how big your woodlot is, how often you're going to be out there moving logs around. If you're only out there periodically and you're going to have logs that you can back up to, but you're also going to have logs that you can't, then I would say a skidding winch is probably the first buy. If you're out there and you're trying to maximize efficiency, you can drive up to every single log, then my suggestion would be a Forestry Grapple. That thing is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of effort. The downside, as I said before, is it will not get logs deep out of the bush for you. This will. This has the upper hand in that case, but it has the lower hand when it comes down to effort. It takes more effort to hook that to your tractor, getting the PTO lined up. It takes more effort to operate. You have more moving parts on it, more wear items, right? You have your cable on there. You have a clutch assembly in there. Now, it's very well built. I've had no problems with it, but inevitably with those wear parts, you will have to deal with them at some point. The Forestry Grapple does not. It's just got some hydraulic hoses, and it's got your rotator up top there that spins thing, and it's got one hydraulic cylinder. So there's not a lot going on there. There's no PTO. And so this thing probably will have less maintenance in the life of the equipment. But then again, if you abuse things, you could have a breakdown on anything immediately. So when it comes down to it, the real question is, what would I like to use day in and day out for my operation? Well, the truth is they both have their application. I'd like to have both of them. But if I only had one and I was choosing it for efficiency and comfort, it's this thing, the Forestry Grapple. This thing is very unique and it's very fast, and it's great because I don't have to get out there and play around with the bugs, snow, and the mud. That's what I like about this. However, there will be times when I'm looking for that skidding winch because I can't back up to a tree. And that's where this thing has a bit of a downside to it. However, what I do like about this as well, when I pick up some logs and I start heading down the trail, if I want to avoid rubbing those trees up against the edge of the trail where there's existing trees, I can rotate them slightly. And so the tree can follow me based on those rotations, and that's very nice. Now I can also, once I get to wherever I'm dropping the trees off or the logs, I can rotate them and drop them off. So I can put them at any angle I want. They don't just get dropped off in the way I'm traveling. And that's very nice that way. The grip on this, because I can adjust it anytime I want, if the logs start to loosen up as I'm moving, I just grab tighter. If I want to drop a few logs off partway down the trail, maybe at a different landing, I just drop a few off and I pick the rest up and on my way I go. This thing here, once you get a good jag on there and you keep going, you don't really want to get out of the tractor and unhook some of them and then keep going. Because quite likely, once you've started pulling with this thing, all those chains are now sandwiched between other logs, and it's going to be one heck of a job at times getting them out in order to drop just a few logs off. This thing is typically hook it up once, drop it off once, because it's a bit more of an effort. So this thing's great to have, but day in and day out, this thing takes the cake for me. Although, don't let that stray too far. When you hit the ditch in the wintertime, you're certainly looking for something, and it'll be this thing. Anyways, that's going to do it for me here today. Do your due diligence, do some research. Maybe if you can get out and see one of these in operation, do so. It's a tough decision when stuff's expensive, and so hopefully you make the best decision for you. As always, do me that big favor if you haven't done so already. Please give this video the old like-a-roo. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time.